But Serena and I are here representing the Indigenous Land and Data Stewards Lab. And the topic today that we'll be discussing is using technology to create healthy boundaries for our time and energy. And we'll talk a little bit about what does it even mean to have healthy boundaries and kind of the importance of that in our work, especially focused on like in our lab, it's literally what the title suggests, Indigenous land and data stewards and community-based natural resource management. And I should also say that we're housed at CSU, so Colorado State University, on Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne land, and many other nations and peoples, because we're also on a land grab institution. So Dominique also chatted with us yesterday, if you were there. She's not with us today, but she's the lab director. And then I'm an ecology PhD student in the Fish, Wildlife, and Conservation Biology department. And I also assist with a lot of different projects in Dominique's lab as well. And then,
All
Serena,
right,
I'll pass it
yeah,
to you.
sounds good. Hi again. My name is Serena Natanaba. I am Dene from the Navajo Nation. I am also currently a student at Colorado State University in my master's program in forest and rangeland stewardship, and have been with the lab for many years since I was an undergrad. And then next to me is Jemara Gifford. She will be joining us tomorrow for the All Indigenous session. And she's a PhD student in the Human Dimensions of Natural Resource Department. And you'll hear from her a little bit later in this presentation. She did a little pre-recording for us to talk about one of the resources that she's sharing with all of us.
Cool. Yeah, so this part, when I was thinking about healthy boundaries, and especially in the context of settler colonial institutions, like academia, if you're working in the nonprofit sector, it's really hard. Sometimes I'm like, people say things like word salad when it's like health and wellness, healthy boundaries, where it's like, what does that really mean? And I'll say that just in being in academia for a good chunk of my adult life, I have realized, I'm sure a lot of us have, that it will always ask more from you. If you think you're doing the most and contributing the most, it will still ask more from you. And I also learned this from moving away from my institution and realizing the asks dropped so much just because I was inaccessible. And I was like, man, I really got to come up with a way to create boundaries that doesn't involve physically moving myself somewhere else and separating myself from the institution. So that's what we're going to talk about a bit today and just kind of separating ourselves through technology, also creating those healthy boundaries so we can live like our full, rich lives outside of just being a productive machine for our institutions. And yeah, so I just want to emphasize that that's super important in our, capitalist society and within these types of institutions. And I'll pass it back to Serena for us to do a little reflection on this too.
Yeah, so if you were with us yesterday, we did a similar activity with Mentimeter. So if you would like to, you can scan this QR code in the corner, and this will take you to another screen that has these questions pop up that you can type in your answer. Um, if you're not able to scan the QR code, the link is right here. So you can do menti.com and then you'll enter this code right above. But I'll go ahead and exit full screen. It lets me. Oh no. There it goes. All right. Sorry. And then we will go down to this question and do full screen. All right. So the first question that we would like you all to respond to is, what are common asks or demands you are faced with on a regular basis? And I believe that, yes, I can put up the QR code again. Here it is. I'll kind of run through the three questions then while folks are scanning the QR code. So the first one, yeah, what are the common asks and demands? And then what are you prioritizing this season outside of these asks? And then lastly, we'll ask what tech tools or strategies do you recommend for supporting healthy boundaries? Was everyone able to scan the QR code, or should we wait another second? Oh, thanks for putting that in there, Tamara. Ah, oh, no, sorry, my screen is being really weird. Okay, technology. It's fun, right? All right, going back in. Um, yes, so the common asks and demands, I'm seeing quite a few things in here. If you're not familiar with word cloud, we went over this a little bit last or yesterday. The bigger that the word is, the more times people are typing that in and submitting it. Um, let's see. All right, so, and sometimes if you like type a lot of words in word cloud, it like disconnects them. For some reason, I'm not sure why it does that, but I'm seeing mentorship, service work, service, um, giving talks, maybe working on papers, some emotional support, finance administration. So hopefully we'll give a little bit more time for people to finish responding. But hopefully some of the things that we shared today can help mitigate some of these asks. It looks like mentorship is a big one. All right, let's see. Has everyone had time to put in their responses?
You've got 39 responses and 18 participants in the workshop, so I think you're doing pretty good.
Okay, awesome. We will move on. All right, and this next question, what are you prioritizing this season that are outside of those asks? So what are some of the things that you're doing for maybe yourself or your family that's outside of what other people are asking from you?
Do you mean at work or do you mean in life?
I think in general, I think it can be both because setting healthy boundaries can, you know, be for either work or for family and home. Awesome. So I'm starting to see lab creation, which is very fitting for this workshop. Time off is super important. Grant writing, grant applications, powwow, daughter schooling, travel. I think I saw reading at one point, which is my fave. So I'm there with you. Writing, yes, definitely. All right, I'll give a few more seconds for folks to answer, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next question.
I like how writing
Ooh,
has now eclipsed time off, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
story of my
I
life.
feel like that always happens. Me taking time off amounts to me just writing more. All right, we will go ahead and move on to the next question. Thank you for everyone who's participating and answering. So what tech tools or strategies do you recommend for supporting healthy boundaries?
I think those are from your first one, those two answers.
I think so too. I'm not sure why they ended up in this one, but maybe as people answer, that is strange. Saying no. Yes. Unsure. That's fine. That's why we're here. Shared schedules. Calendly. Yes, we'll definitely be going through Calendly today. Mentoring groups. Do not disturb. Yes, saying no is a big one. Avoiding computer. That's a good one too. I always feel like I have trouble with that because everything that's on my computer is also on my phone. And so even if I'm not on my computer, I get notifications, which is something I need to work on.
Yeah, this could have been framed as like anti-tech tools for establishing boundaries. Just get rid of it.
Get it out of here.
Yeah, I see
All
saying no
right.
getting bigger.
Yes, definitely. That is a big one. And the video that Gemra pre-recorded for us talks about ways to say no, which is amazing. We love her. All right, I, just in the interest of time, am going to move on, but thank you all for your responses. Let me try to maneuver back to our presentation. All right, go for it, Tamara.
Oh, yeah. I really appreciate those responses, and I think we're kind of all in the same boat where we're just like doing our best with what we have. And for the rest of our talk, we're just going to go through a few examples that we use here. They're not exhaustive by any means, and hopefully we'll have time to share amongst each other some other resources. So yeah, you can go to the next slide. Cool. Yeah, I know there's a delay. I was on the tech side yesterday and I was like, the amount of times I clicked escape on my computer. Yeah, so kind of going with that Mentimeter activity, the different questions that we asked and the order that we asked is something that I try to think about in terms of deciding what technology I might need. So what are all the asks and tasks that I'm faced with in the season? And one of the things in my own life outside of work that I want to think about, and then putting all that together and thinking about how to prioritize those things. So an example from my life is, turns out when you sit at your desk for a really long time, your posture gets messed up. Like my legs have been having issues. So I've been needing to do a lot more like stretching, like really intentional stretching. So I have, an alarm that goes off where I need to get up and go do that thing or I'm gonna forget. But that's something where I'm trying to build in that priority within my workday. And it could also be things like I need to end my day at 3 or 4 p.m. I need to go pick my kids up, those types of things. And then how can we build in this like automated approach so you don't have to keep revisiting this every day of like, what are my priorities today? Which you can totally do. And I think that's amazing. But sometimes we're like, I open my computer, emails on, and now I'm sucked in again. So that's what we're gonna try to think about when we're building in these tools. And I think I'm going with the first one because it's my schedule. Yeah, so somebody mentioned Calendly and the Mentimeter, which is awesome. I only recently started using it because you can kind of see that my schedule is maybe a little too available. But something you can think about, which is in my schedule as well, is setting specific work hours. Maybe not everyone wants to actually work a 9 to 5, but if that's something, you want your evenings off, it's automatically built in. You can also, like I said, I put in times for stretching or taking lunch. Maybe there's other cultural or seasonal activities that you're working on that isn't already in your calendar. If you add those in, and then Calendly is a free platform you can use to integrate with your calendar. And so when somebody tries to schedule with you, it's automatically blocked off, and you don't have to justify yourself. You don't have to explain it again. This is just what you have available. And then, yeah, Max had talked about Dominique's automatic response yesterday, which we'll go through a little bit. But this is also just something to think about in articulating your priorities and commitments and thinking about your realistic capacity, so that when somebody does try to email you, you don't necessarily have to write it all out and explain yourself, but just have it on the front end. And I have here modeling new norms for academia. I think we all are like, you don't respond to me over email in 2 to 3 days. I have the right to be upset. Like, that's what I feel like the norm is sometimes. And when you put it on the front end of, no, this is why we're slowing down, pushing back against urgency culture, which is part of that broader white supremacist, colonial, capitalist culture of things need to happen quickly, then I think it starts to become easier for everyone to be able to do that. Okay, you can go to the next one. So this is Dominique's amazing automatic response, and she's not here today, so I get to talk about it. And I'll read little portions of it, and I highlighted different. This is the most amazing auto response in the world. True. So some of the things that she highlights, which I pulled out, are the capacity, priorities and action, and then why it's important to do these things. Why she's setting these boundaries. So at the beginning, she explicitly states that it's a busy season for family and teaching and all these responsibilities. And so she can't respond to all messages. That's her realistic capacity. I can't respond to all this. Yeah, this is always on, not only when she's on leave. And then her priorities. So existing commitments to scholars, she's an amazing mentor. So if you're thinking, I really want more time for mentorship, putting some of these other tasks aside or lower priority could really help with that. And then, yeah, so clearly focusing on her lab, which we're all in this space to think about our lab space. So that's helpful. And then as far as priorities and action, something that we'll talk a little bit about too later, but we have different platforms for different communication. So in our lab, we use something called Slack. It's a platform where it's more chat based, and you can also have different pages for different projects. I didn't want to open that up for this session just because it's more around organizing projects and less around creating boundaries, but that could be something to think about if you want a way to communicate outside of email with projects that you feel are a higher priority for you. And then for other projects, she talks about using the contact page on the lab website. And Serena will talk more about that later, but it's just a way to kind of move things out of email and organize them based on those priorities that she's setting. And then lastly, this is really important. It's really important to set boundaries so that she can focus on the important work for the lab. And this is also serving the broader community. Yeah, so you can go to the next one. And then this one, I just really loved seeing this. This was a organization that I had emailed, but I was like, word, that's fair. This person was like, I respond weekly. If you don't, they literally do. They responded to me 7 days later. If it's urgent, I kindly ask that you mark urgent in your email or contact via phone. So that's fair. The other part that I really enjoyed was this weekly response time. Yes, it's in our ethics, and they summarize that a bit below, and I'll read that because I feel like it ties into the values part too. Why are we pushing back against the urgency culture? So this organization seeks to be trauma-informed and anti-oppressive in all that we do, including how we navigate time and the pacing of our daily operations and work obligations. We actively resist exhaustion, overworking, and placing workplace needs above personal needs for rest. Um, so yeah, just plain and simple, and it's a good reminder for us all that, yeah, I think setting healthy boundaries or setting boundaries helps us improve our own well-being. And then, yeah, I'll pass it to you, Serena, for Jem, who puts all this into action, which is awesome.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Tamara. So before I play this video, the QR code, we love QR codes in our presentations. This is not the last one that you'll see. But the QR code in the right-hand corner will take you to a Google Doc about what Gemra is talking about in this video. It's a document on how to say no in a way that is not super cold. And so I'll let Gemra talk to you all about this because she does it beautifully. Thank you for putting that in the chat too, Tamara. All right, let's see and cross our fingers that the sound works.
Hey everyone, this is Gemma Gifford from the Indigenous Data and Land Stewards Lab at Colorado State University. I just wanted to hop on here for a few minutes and share a template that I have created for saying no. I am a recent small business owner, consultant, and facilitator, and I have been really lucky to be successful in my business so far, and I get lots of requests for facilitation. I have several clients, and the last few months or so, I've been really inundated with requests that I just can't accept, or almost a feeling of people thinking they can just call me and get free advice, pick your brain kind of stuff. So I thought, dang, I really need to create a template to help myself say no to requests that feel extractive or when I know I'm just above my capacity. So the first thing I'm going to share with you is an article that I found online. It's a pretty standard article, very corporate, 20 templates to say no to just about everything. I generally liked it, but it felt pretty icky for me, very techie, the first two sentences, you're already seeing Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs. So that just didn't really feel as good to me as someone who is really invested in building relationships with the people that I work with. And I don't know, I don't think that we always need to go off of what the so-called billionaires are doing. So that resource didn't really work for me. So I just decided to create my own. And I have created a Google Doc that you are all welcome to use at any point. So this is called Gem Saying No Mega Thread, and it's got 4 sections to it. I'll just walk you through it really quick. The first one is like, I'm at capacity, even if it's the coolest event I've ever heard, I just can't do it. So really simple email, just saying, hey, I'm just absolutely at capacity. Maybe it's just this summer you're really busy, but the fall opens up for you, so you can indicate what timeline works for you. A lot of times I get requests from clients where their need is a lot higher than what I have to provide. They really need one-on-one attention or several touch points, a lot of problem solving. So even if I might have the time, theoretically, I might decline a project just because I don't have the emotional capacity, or their needs really just are greater than what I can provide. Sometimes you might not be the right person, or you want to pass this off to someone in your network. So here's an email that kind of does that. One thing that I've been noticing is in working in wildlife and conservation, natural resources, particularly, it's a really non-diverse group of people. So often I am the first Indigenous person they've ever met in their life. And so therefore they request me for everything. I was once asked to be a plenary speaker for a tribal energy summit, which I declined because I don't have experience in energy. But I try to sort of guide them in the right direction, contacting tribal energy, renewable energy organizations, or putting them directly in contact with someone in my network. I think people generally mean well, but they may contact you because you're just the only person that they know. Unfortunately, that is often the case here in Colorado and even in Wyoming. Section 3 is when you need to decline a request because it doesn't feel reciprocal, or, of course, the request to pick your brain. I typically get these from faculty, occasionally graduate students, and if I have an existing relationship with them, of course, we'll meet for coffee, but I have to kind of put boundaries up when it comes to people asking me for essentially free advice that doesn't really seem to be reciprocal. So here's another example, a little bit different, but usually a request for an event. And I had to put another boundary up. I really need 2 months for any kind of event request. Otherwise, I just feel too scattered with travel. And, I just really need to decline those requests that are anything sooner. And then this one, unfortunately, has become more common when past clients or word gets around about what I'm doing. People think they can ask me to do work for free, so I explain to them exactly how I do work, which requires a scope of work, a budget, and an agreed upon timeline, not one that is urgent or unpaid. And essentially, these requests tend to feel really icky because they're checking a box, or they assume because I'm an Indigenous woman, a young person, that I must be needing any possible work that I can find. And the truth is that I actually have a full workload, and no, I'm not just saying yes to every request that comes through my door. So I've had to really kind of be a little bit more assertive here. So that's section 4. Feel free to use this, copy and paste it. Dr. Dominique David-Chavez is the queen at this. I'm sure she's got other tips, as well as Tamara and Serena, my colleagues, who I have learned so much from on our Say No thread on Slack. So thank you all. I hope you have a great rest of the session.
Awesome, thanks, Gemma. Okay, let me see if I can get out of this and go back to the presentation. It's so funny, this whole presentation is about technology and it's just not working.
Everyone can try a new thing. That's our goal.
Yep. Oh no, it's really not letting me get out of here. Hold on.
Just press escape 30 more times.
Oh no, don't play again. All right, we're just gonna keep moving along. All right. Yeah, something too that I really love that our lab does is Jamara mentioned it at the end of that video, is on Slack, the platform that Tamara was talking about earlier, is we have a whole channel on Slack about saying no and like celebrating when each other says no to certain things that maybe they committed to before and then are realizing that we just don't have the capacity to do it at this point. So we just love celebrating each other, which is just amazing. All right, so we're gonna go into our third example. Again, there's a QR code in the top right corner, and this will take you to our lab's website. And this is just really an example of, so you put up the email automatic messages, but your email's still getting flooded with requests and such. And so this is something that has been really helpful for the lab in terms of kind of helping to filter out those requests even further. So this is our lab's website. This is in the Connect with Us tab. And this is just really for different categories of people who may be reaching out to the lab or to Dr. D. We're gonna focus on the request for service and expertise, but I just wanted to point out that there are different forms for different types of folks who are reaching out. So you can click on this one and it takes you all the way down to this request for service or expertise. And here's a little just paragraph talking about our lab and some of the like services that we focus on. But again, in bold, that there's a high volume of requests and to consider the nature of your request in terms of balancing time and energy with potential impacts. So again, just, you know, making whoever is making that request to do a little more thinking on kind of where they're coming from and doing some of that homework before reaching out to us. So this form, you fill out your name, last name, email, a subject of what you are inquiring about, the dates, and then some self-reflecting questions. So how will our time and energy be reciprocated? Who will benefit from this service? And what meaningful outcomes do you anticipate resulting from this? So just really taking that time to like self-reflect and making sure that, you know, is this a request that is gonna be reciprocated in some way? And is the result of me asking gonna be positive or, right? And so this is the request that gets submitted. And then you have space to like give a little more information or background about your request and you submit it. And this submission goes to a lab email that isn't directly to Dr. D. So her emails don't get doubly flooded with things, which is amazing because we all know emails are just a dark hole that no one can ever climb out of. So this is a way to try to get around that. And we also have this article by Jessie Pop, Dr. Jessie Pop, where you can click on it and it takes you directly to this article about, yay, you want to reach out to Indigenous scholars. Amazing, awesome, but here are 10 things to consider before you do. So it gives whoever's reaching out another opportunity to do some homework on their own before even reaching out to the lab. And then it also, I guess I can go back over here because we talked about this on the next slide, is our resource hub. So this is where folks can go to do more homework on their own, do some reading about some of the stuff that they may be requesting, or you know, asking some advice or expertise on. And it's linked in here. Again, this is in this QR code. So if you go to that QR code, it'll take you to this page, which is our resource hub. Here's some frequently asked questions where you can, you know, if you're a current or prospective scholar, here's like a little blurb and it takes you to the part of the resource hub that would be most helpful for you. I know this part is kind of still in the works. So if anyone has any advice or, you know, some suggestions, we are definitely open to that. But if you scroll down, I have to keep moving the pictures of people, but this is the resources. So you can read and see which one is like going to be most useful for you, and then you can click on it and it takes you to another page where it's like, welcome to first steps in engaging in this work, with links within the text that help take you outside of this to more resources, because it's all about informing without us having to do it.
Yeah, get people totally lost with the links and learning, and they forget that they were trying to contact you.
And then it's fine, and then and that helps. But yes, many links, but I think it's still worth it. And then let's see. Yeah, encouraging self-guided learning. It's a work in progress. Here is like just the URL for this part of the website too, just in case you're not able to scan the QR code. Was there anything else that we needed to go over for the website, Tamara? I think I covered.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think you
cool.
covered it. Yeah, again, like I'm working on this a lot with Dominique, and so if there's things where you're like, I get this ask a lot, it'd be helpful to have a blog. Not that we're pumping them out very quickly, but I think it's good to hear also from colleagues about what they're faced with, because the hope is to not just unburden our lab and Dominique, but also like as a community, hopefully this is a resource that other folks could point people too, like we use Dr. Jesse Pop's blog, just so we can keep circulating information and not have to
Right.
repeat ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. All right, let's see. Well, we have quite
Yeah.
a bit of time left, so I guess
I'm
we could go
wondering,
more.
um,
Oh, go
I
ahead, go ahead.
guess we can see how folks are feeling, but the next thing was more of like thinking about your priorities and outlining those and thinking about different like tech tools that can support you in that, which still think is a really valuable exercise. I'm wondering if it would be helpful to have some open discussion if other folks have tools they want to share, just so we can have a bigger like toolbox when we're thinking about um, how to support our own work. That's kind of my two train of thought, but I don't know what feels most meaningful to the group. So I'll just ask if anyone has other techie tools. Max, I feel like you're like, I'm super tech savvy, and I believe it. If you have other tools to share, like
I used
using
to be
templates
super,
for emails.
10 years ago, I was amazingly tech savvy, and now I'm old. One of the things that I know when I mentor laterally, so like other Indigenous people who are at a similar level to me, there's a lot of like, how do you know when to say no? Like, how do you know how to prioritize? So how do you identify your spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical priorities that let you pick between two fairly awesome things that would take you in maybe different directions? So does your lab talk about that? How you pick like some no's are obvious and some have to do with capacity, but do you guys talk about how to refine your yeses?
Go for it, Tamara.
Yeah, I mean the we can look at that oh my thing went away.
I'll pull it up.
We can look at that mural too. I did like trim off a lot of this saying no types of pathways or saying yes or saying no, just so that we could, this is like maybe an earlier stage, and then once you're thinking about what you want to say no and yes to, I find it helpful to really be able to visualize what I'm working with, because sometimes when I'm a people pleaser, I'm working through it. I'm sure other people are like that too, but I think about who I'm talking to. Like if they're expressing a need, I immediately go there. But thinking about visualizing it, writing it down. I have my own board next to me of like different tasks in the house or for myself that I need to do, and being able to like it's really just like that critical reflection. And I think Jem also hit the nail on the head, is if it's not compensated and I don't really know this person, like there isn't a reciprocal relationship built, I've had to just like, I'm just saying no. Like that's just, even I'm a early career professional, experience is always good. At this point, still I'll say no. Um, so I think having those like easy no's is good, and then being able to do that critical reflection. At least that's what I end up doing. And we walked through it. What Serena's showing now is part of what we've done as a lab, of doing that critical reflection around what are your spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental buckets that you're focusing on. And then the heart work are more of these like bigger tasks like bigger picture tasks. And the whys, like why are these important? Yeah, so starting there before even like being able to think about what you can say yes and no to. I don't know if that helped answer that. It's not very clear. It's not like a perfect roadmap, of course, because it changes too. And then I see Erica's hand up.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
question. I love this step thing. I'm learning also to not be so much people pleaser, and I really learned to say no. And so this is really helpful. My question is, have you experienced, or anyone can comment on, have you experienced pushback from the people, your institutions, in your responses, and say, or like the automated responses and how they're worded or phrased?
Ooh, I have such a good story, Erica. This is Max.
Okay.
All right. I
Okay.
spent however many hours writing the most beautiful no template, and I used it for I don't know how many years, like 7. And then I gave the response, and it was fine. I never got pushback. And then I gave it to ChatGDP, and I said, ChatGDP, please rewrite this, but with but friendlier, or whatever I said. And it wrote this thing that put a bunch of emotional labor into it and feminized it, which mine wasn't for potentially obvious reasons. And I use that. And now people thank me when I say no to them. So there you go. ChatGDP for the win.
Yeah, I don't have an automatic response on yet, so I haven't had pushback. I will say I have had not pushback, but people just don't speak to me again after I ask about compensation in particular. An example is I think it was something related to fish and wildlife agencies, and they wanted me to give a presentation, and I said I felt uncomfortable not getting paid to present in front of like all these agency professionals as a graduate student who's like notoriously underpaid. And they just didn't respond. And I was like, okay, maybe I don't. The caveat is like, I'm like, maybe I don't work for those people. I don't know when they might come up in my life in the future, and maybe I left a bad impression that I don't know. And I just kind of have to like, not, it's not meant to be, I guess.
I've started using a lot of the language
Go ahead.
in my time, like when I get requests, is like, hey, I'm an early career scholar. I want to know how this is going to benefit the work that I'm being asked to do, or what are the expected outcomes in terms of publications or grants. Especially if I've gotten a lot of invitations for being like in working groups. And how do you see this like being a benefit to an early career scholar? And conversely, like if you were in my position, would you be doing this work? So I often ask that when I get requests. And then the same thing with asking for payment. I'm sorry, I'm not at a place right now where I can do free labor, but please keep me in mind when you do have a budget. So I think that those are helpful ways to ask politely, but like they understand that we're getting so many requests, and if they can find the budget, they should, especially when it's coming from like private institutions or heavily endowed institutions.
That's smooth, Lydia. I'm not in a position to do free work right now, but keep me in mind when you have a budget. That is some passive aggressive smoothness that I really appreciate.
And so that, I will say, has come from working with a lot of outdoor companies where I see that they have big budgets for white athlete influencers, but then are asking me to do a lot of education and free labor. So that's where I've been like, can you tell me, even if they're like, would you be interested in this? I'm like, can you tell me what your budget considerations are for this type of work or workshop? And it's meant like with REI, they didn't want to pay me. So I'm like, well, I don't want to do this workshop. You're asking me to do so much extra work that's beyond my capacity. So, you know, I don't know. I feel comfortable stepping away from that type of work. But yeah, that was definitely what I would recommend.
Thanks for that, Lydia. Also, hi. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, I was like, is that Lydia? Somehow I recognize your voice too. Yeah, and something I do try to tell my peers, because I'm in grad school, and I think also at our institution there is a lot of asks to join like diversity, equity, and inclusion committees and stuff like that, which I'm sure we could have a whole workshop on that too. But yeah, what you're saying around like not only asking about budget, but asking about like what are the tangible benefits? Because it doesn't always have to be monetary, right? There's a lot of like, we have this heart work, and sometimes that's not paid, but it's something you're really passionate about. And I totally get that. The part that I struggle with, which I try to encourage peers to ask too, is about this, like, what is your power in that space? Is it to, yeah, just do this kind of one-off consulting so that somebody can feel like, you know, they quote unquote included an Indigenous person and now they can move on? Or are you actually like part of the decision-making process for some kind of effort? I'm more likely to join in on something like that if the pay is not great or non-existent, if I really feel like my decision will matter and lead to something. But it takes like asking that question, and people might get a little insecure about that because that's not always the intention of those different committees.
Kind of to add into that, Tamara, and this is something I think that Max taught me, was that I feel like a lot of people, especially as you're finishing up your PhDs and they want to meet with you and talk about your work, particularly for like federal agencies, and it's what they consider consulting work, but getting consultation based on talking about what your work and expertise is, but you're not really being compensated for that time. And so being really like intentional about like, well, what is the output of this? Yeah, how will the ideas be cited? Karen kind of put that. I think those are really important pieces. Yes, because I think that they really harness in on the fact that like there's so few of us here, we have to have our voices heard. But then I've definitely seen ideas taken without that credit or citation because I haven't published that work yet. So being really careful about that. And I think it was Max who was saying, you just need to stop meeting with people until you get that work out, which I started doing. So thanks, Max.
I will always tell you not to meet with people.
All right, well, let's see. We have technically like 13 more minutes. So we could either spend time kind of going through, if folks want to fill this out, you are more than welcome to. Just make sure to either like duplicate or download a copy instead of like going on here directly and filling things out and moving it around, just because this is our template. Or we can like keep more open discussion. I think we're kind of open to whatever folks want to do. Go ahead, Veronica. Oh, yeah.
Hi. I just think it's that we are conditioned to say, like, give it a reason why we're saying no. And I really appreciate the idea of the email. What was it? The email. I can't even think now. But the email response going out saying, no, I can't do this, without having to give a reason. And I mean, I've always felt I had to give a reason why I'm saying no, almost apologizing, even though I'm not really sorry for it. So I really appreciate that.
There's even a more radical step beyond the just saying no without a reason. And that's, I had a conversation with Eve Tuck, the fancy Eve Tuck. And I said, Eve, how do you respond to all the requests in your email for like talks and stuff like that? And she was like, oh, I just don't answer them. I was like, what? My mind exploded. I mean, she has added some caveats since then. She's like, well, if it's non-compensated, if it seems tokenistic, then I don't answer it. If it seems like someone's actually in it, you know, for the and get things, then maybe she would. But the vast majority of things she just deletes. And I was like, damn, she's my hero.
Yeah, if there was like a automatic like email shredder, I just didn't see it. I think that would help.
I'd call it Eve. If I had an auto one, I'd just call it Eve. The Eve T. Yeah.
we already started doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. But thank you all for um, sorry, I was reading the chat. For coming to our session today. I hope, oh, nope, don't look at that. That's for tomorrow. I hope you all got something from our talk, and I really appreciate the conversation that we're having towards the end of this too, because I am a graduate student, so I'm like just now getting into lots of requests from different folks, and so learning this early on in my academic career is um, kind of amazing because it's made the difference for me, I think, for this, and then working so closely with Dr. D, where she's like very intentional with the time and like who she spends her energy working with. And so, yeah, just as a graduate student, this has also been really helpful for myself. So thank you all.
Yeah, I agree with Serena, and I think I emphasized this yesterday too, but I do really feel like when more people are putting these types of things into practice, I feel like I can do it easier. Um, and I say this too in the fish and wildlife field, it's notorious for not paying people. Like people just want experience and that's payment enough. Um, but they do have money, and I found creative ways also to pay people, so I know it's possible. And when more people are making those demands, we get a higher bar. And so just like encouraging also like that collective like critical mass energy, so that it's easier and easier to say no and the standards keep getting pushed higher. But yeah, I really appreciate the wisdom that was shared by folks. And yeah, you're welcome to use the resources that's many, the links or the QR codes, whatever suits you. And we'll probably share some stuff with Max to put in any resources that are shared later. So yeah, I really appreciate you all. And now, Max, I think you have extra time for a closeout for this session.
Or we could just be radical and end early.